Hi, Michael here, and in this video journal I'll be installing the sound ports in the sides that I've been working on. I'll cut the sound port hole and install the sound port border. Keep watching. Cutting out the sound port border. Since the sound port border has to fit the sound port hole precisely, this process is best done using my CNC machine. Sound port placement. Okay, I've gotten both of the sides bent, end blocks on, side reinforcement braces are in, the kerfing's on, and the arm bevel block has been installed. These both guitars are going to have sound ports on them. One's going to have an oval sound port, and one was going to have a teardrop shaped one. And they will be located right there on the guitar. But the sides are only 2 millimeters thick, so I need to reinforce that a little bit with something. So I've taken pieces of ambrosia maple that the guitar is being built out of, and I've thinned it down to 1.5 millimeters thick. And I've created a little patch. It's going to go right in here, with the grain is running cross grain to the grain of the sides. That'll help protect the sides from breaking. And I'm just going to fit this in here a little bit more. Okay, ready to glue on. Gluing on the patch. Okay, I've prepared my little 1.5 millimeter ambrosia maple patch, side reinforcement, if you will, that's going to go where my sound port border is going to be here on the guitar body. And I've fitted it carefully in there. I'm going to use a little brush here to help me spread all this out. So plexiglass clamping cauls. Okay, we'll let that dry, and I might do a little bit more glue squeeze up as it squeezes out. Sound port hole placement. Okay, with my patch on the inside or my reinforcement piece on there, now what I need to do is determine the placement of my sound port on the outside. Then I'm just going to take a piece of paper that has sticky back on the side that you use for labels. And I'm just going to span that distance really right here. And then I'm just going to come back and mark the beginning of each one of these side reinforcement brace locations, because the sound port will be in between those two. And then I'm going to mark a center line. And this little sound port will go somewhere right in there. Sound port router guide. Now to cut the sound port, I've cut out the outside of the sound port in a piece of cherry that I'm going to use to place my router on, so I can route out that hole after I've kind of carve it out a little bit. But what I need to do is match the side of this to the profile of my side so that I can cut that out on a bandsaw. So I've got my some lines scribed on here that will kind of match where my side reinforcement braces are going to line up. Yes. Now I can line up my side reinforcement braces. I want to kind of keep the plane of my piece of cherry and the plane of the sides is as level as possible. Obviously I can't because this is curved, but it's probably good there. So describe that line. Now that will give me a line that I can take, and I'll cut all this off on the bandsaw.
Cutting the guide on the bandsaw. Cutting the sound port hole.
Okay, I've gotten the second body with the little piece of paper and my center line and my locations of the side reinforcement braces that I want to get the sound port in between. And this sound port will be a little oval, teardrop or whatever. It's going to go right about there. I've just cut out the router guide for it, and I want to go ahead and position it on here. And just I'm going to mark the outside of the sound port with a little pencil. And then I'm going to take a small washer and a red pencil and mark an inside line. Okay, so the red line is for me to cut out to in my rough cut, and then I will sand very close to the black line, and then I'll use my little flush cut router on the template that I just took off to sneak up and just really smooth everything down. Okay. Okay.
Coping saw to the red line.
I've gotten the second sound port rough cut out. And now it's time to clean that up.
Sanding the rough cut hole.
Okay, now that I've gotten the second sound port rough cut out, it's time to go ahead and do some smoothing on it and get it. And I'm just going to use this sanding drum in my flexible shaft. All right, I think that's good for getting down as close as I can.
Routing the sound port hole.
Okay, now it's time to put our router guide back on, clamp it in place, get everything lined up again. Now, get our router back out, and we'll route down to that line. Plugged it in, and just start doing some trimming. Okay, we're getting down to where we need to be. All right, got the second sound port cut out. Second sound port hole.
fitting the sound port border.
Okay, everything's ready to install the sound port border now. I've gotten the instrument sanded down and the hole cut and everything's ready to go in.
Gluing in the sound port border.
I have placed some shellac around the outside of the hole so that not so much of the glue squeeze out may get on the maple that I might have a hard time removing. And I'm going to use a 2-part epoxy to glue this in. Let's get this 2-part mixed up. I'm going to place it on the inside of the cutout for the sound port. So here we go. I've marked an upside. Just going to stick it in there and hope for the best. There we go. Now I'm going to simply take a guitar string cut off, go around the outside a little bit and smooth that epoxy over the areas that might have a little gap in them. Okay.
Trimming the sound port border.
Well, okay, I've gotten the sound port border glued onto the sides, and now it's time to trim it down. So I've just created a little piece of, I guess it's some kind of little vinyl, a little piece of plastic that's got the same cutout as my sound port. I'm just going to put it right over it here on the side. And I'm going to use a flush cut saw just to trim it on down as flush as I can get to the top, or to the top of the sides.
Final sanding the sound port border.
I've got the majority of the sound port border off with the saw, and now I've gotten down to where I've got a ridge here, but it's too close to want to try to use a chisel on because this is such a figured piece of wood that it'll tear out. So I'm just going to sand until I get it flush. Okay, I've spent some time sanding with successively finer grit papers here on the inside, and I'm just finishing up now with some 320 just by hand, not on a block. Okay, I spent some time sanding here on the outside. And we've got it flush on both sides. Now I just want to take a little bit of time and do a little bit of rounding on the edges.
Sound ports completed.
Well, that concludes this video journal on the sound ports. I hope you've enjoyed watching and perhaps even learned something. Stay with me next time. I'll start working on closing the box. Thank you so much for watching.